let's get rolling here. Folks over on Facebook got a little, they got a little hot mic on us there. Anyway, good evening, everyone. Salutations. Welcome back. This crazy gibberish Wastrel Wednesday edition. This is my handsome co-host, Kyle. Say hello, Kyle.
Howdy. G'day. See, I can speak American and English.
That's right. We are two nations divided by a common language.
Yeah, that's right.
Good evening, Bo. Bo's over there in YouTube chat. So, we got to start off and address the elephant in the room of why I was streaming but not streaming at 5 o'clock in the morning Eastern Standard US. So, the PC that I'm on right now is a dedicated streaming PC. I don't game on it. I don't do anything on this machine but stream. When I am done with a stream, I tell YouTube to shut off. I tell Facebook to shut off. And most of the time, I tell OBS, the streaming software that I use, to shut off. But if it's on and the camera's off and the websites are off, hey Rob, it doesn't matter. I mean, it's like, I don't know, if your television is off and your cable box is off and you have a separate DVR but it's on, it doesn't matter because there's no input or output going. Or so I thought. So I didn't put up, I didn't schedule a stream for today when I finally lay me down to sleep, which was this morning. Not your this morning, Kyle, although I guess technically it might have been this morning for you. I don't know. But not last night, but this morning I had some things I had to deal with that kept me up way past my beauty sleep rest time. So I was just like, fuck it, I will schedule the stream in the morning at some point. Crashed. Stagger out here at whenever I do and see that since 5:30 in the morning, YouTube has been streaming nothing. It picked a random title from a Monday live stream that I did, slapped it on the video, and then told you guys. And what's crazy is, before I deleted the video, according to the metrics, I had people in and out. There were some people in chat. I got some likes. Kyle, people liked just blank video. Just a black screen. I don't know if that depresses or amuses me, but
it's very Andy Warhol, isn't it?
It is. So, yeah, I don't know what.
It reminds me. Years ago there was a Cheech and Chong comedy record, and it was 45 minutes of silence, followed by 3 minutes at the end of Cheech and Chong stoned and laughing their asses off, saying, "You got ripped off, man."
But yeah. So that was our Cheech and Chong comedy album. Then we literally had.
Bo says, "I thought it was experimental death metal."
Experimental death metal. But yeah, that's what was up. You guys didn't miss anything. There was no there was no, like, if you play the video backwards, you would have heard like a recording of Gary Gygax or anything. I looked at it. I saw that some of you guys had gotten notifications and said, let's watch Bill's live stream at this ungodly hour. And then I went in and I saw that, like, okay, this video is 5 hours and 38 minutes long. So I stopped it, and YouTube dutifully attempted to process it to turn it into something that, could sit on their servers. And presumably if I had run my yap for that long, I would have wanted it there, but I just, went in and I deleted it. But folks, I don't know why. I do not understand how it was that YouTube was able to just decide on its own, through no input of mine. When I looked at this computer, when I was trying to decipher what had happened, there was no browser up. Okay? There was no browser up. I had YouTube open in many tabs on my main PC across on the other side of the studio there, but it was all watching videos. So if anybody wants $5 internet dollars and can tell me exactly what happened, I'd much appreciate it. I was telling Kyle earlier, I'm going to be checking authentication factors and running deep scans on both PCs to make sure I didn't have some 22-year-old Ukrainian meth head who bought himself a botnet decide to poke around some old neckbeard's PC. So no idea, guys. But in good news, let's talk about good things. Kyle will be joining us for slightly more frequent get-togethers, won't you, Kyle?
Yep, can do.
Yep. So, Kyle will be joining us a couple of nights a week. I'll readjust the schedule. Still be doing stuff during the days, and, if we get a day where it's like Kyle's on at night, but it's better during the day for a guest, then, hey, you get two for. So it works out. So I'm pretty pleased about that. But how is everybody this evening? I've run my mouth enough. Hello to Adam. Good to see you. Adam Black, James Keck. Still love your observatory, man. Getting some fascinating data from that place. Of course, Bo, his second visit today. But yeah, it's good to see everyone. I know usually this is when Kyle and I play a little bit of conflict, but I've been doing the how to AD&D streams, and I thought Kyle has a very keen intellect on the AD&D front. So now that we've kind of gone through basic character creation, the hows and whys of good equipment purchases, what constitutes good equipment purchases and all, I want to look holistically, not holistically with an H, but WHO. Bo's trying to start a fight. But anyway, the overall of the player's handbook is not just create one character, read this advice at the end. There's lots of character classes, and there's lots of ways to approach character creation. And so Kyle and I talked about it, and we said, hey, let's do that. Let's talk about it. Now, you guys in the chat tell me if you want me to put the player's handbook up on the screen. I can put it between Kyle and I or something like that. But I think those of you with one are going to be able to follow along conceptually. And now I'm going to stop talking and let Kyle get a word in edgewise.
So Bo makes a comment about 46 drop lowers, taking the piss. My contention is that stats don't matter terribly much. That is why it was actually a couple of months ago, we started off with Passable the veteran, first level Elven fighter, and I deliberately gave him all exactly average stats, straight 10s in everything. Because my contention is it doesn't matter terribly much. People like to quote that bit by Gygax from the DMG where you need a 15 or 2 to be a terribly useful character. But 15 itself doesn't do much in most with most of your stats. I got the player's handbook where The cover's fallen away. This is my original one from 1983. Like 15, it just gives you a bit more on strength. It gives you a bit more encumbrance. You don't have any better chance of opening doors than someone with 8 to 9 strength, and you've got 7% chance to bend bars, lift gates versus 1% of 8, 9. So 15 strength isn't really that big a deal. It's not until you get to 16, 17, 18 that most of the stats make a huge difference. 15 con gives you +1 hit points. That can help a little bit, and pretty good system shock and reaction rolls. 15 charisma. The 15 charisma is, I believe, the most useful one of those, but we'll come back to that in a bit. Sorry, I skipped over a page. That's what happens when they're all apart.
We got to get that fixed, Kyle. We got to get that rebound for you about it.
15 wisdom, that's pretty good because you get a bonus to saving throws, and every little bit helps, especially at low level. It's most useful for a cleric because if you've got 15 wisdom, you'll get 2 extra first level spells and 1 extra second level spell, which when you're at first level with just 1 spell a day is going to be huge. That would be a real help. And then 15 dexterity, it improves your AC by 1. That helps a little bit. So 15 itself doesn't help much. What really helps is like 16, 17, 18. They're your real standout ones, just as 3, 4, 5 are the real standout ones of how bad of it being really bad. The truly bad stats are when you have something 5 or less. And if you look at the charts, you'll see things like strength 5. Here or lower, the character can only be a magic user. And then intelligence 5, here or lower, the character can only be a fighter, and so on. So that you'll find that actually excludes a lot of characters from play because, for example, if you have 8 strength and 5 intelligence, you can only be a fighter, but you're not qualified to be a fighter. So that character goes away into the hireling pile.
Yeah.
This is, this guy, he tried out for fighter school and they went, no, Pee Wee Herman, sorry, you can't manage it. So those ones just get set aside and become hirelings. So that 5 or lower rule excludes the ones with the really bad rolls because it's only at 6 where you start to see any penalty for most of the things. There are some things that you see penalty, like a 7 wisdom will give you a -1 on your saving throws. So there'll be some things. It has to be, but basically in that kind of 6 to 15 range, it doesn't really make a hell of a lot of difference. If you do 46 drop lowest, you're much less likely to get any of those 5 or lower results. But as I said, those ones are going to get excluded anyway in many cases. But you're more likely to get the 16, 17, 18. That is, you're more likely to actually get a bonus on your actions. Mm-hmm. My contention is it doesn't matter terribly much because I know as a player I'm not supposed to have this, but I'm a rebel, what can I say? This one's falling apart too. These are my original ones. So for example, a first level fighter trying to hit even somebody in like leather and shield, they need a 13. +1, that means they need a 12 instead. So instead of a 35% chance of hitting, they've got a 40% chance of hitting. That's good, okay, that's an improvement, but it's not really that big a deal. +1 here or there isn't that big a deal. It's a much bigger deal to be going up a level or 2. What it comes down to is that, especially at the lower levels, these things, the randomness of the dice is much huger than a bonus or a penalty here or there. And what's most powerful of all is not even having to make a roll. That's what's most powerful of all. And that's where the player wits comes in and where good GMing comes into it. So the example, you guys probably haven't heard it. Bill's heard it a million times. Sorry, Bill. But the example I always give is I had a bunch of players and their characters went into a dungeon and there were 2 sarcophagi. And they went, oh shit, there'll be mummies in these things. And indeed, they saw the lids start to move. Right? They achieved surprise, so the mummies hadn't come out yet. the magic user goes, hold portal on one of the sarcophagi, and then has the whole party go and sit on the other one. And then he gets out a rock drill. And I'd asked, what the hell do you want a rock drill for? And he explained it was to get through locks. Right? So if the thief's pick locks didn't work, they had the backup of drilling through the lock with a rock drill. I was like, yeah, okay. So then, with the whole party sitting on the lid of the sarcophagus, he was going with the rock drill and going this evil cackle. And after he drilled 2 holes in it, he then poured some oil in and lit it up. And the mummy perished horribly. That one done, they went over to the one with the whole portal on it, and they did the same thing there. Not a single die roll was required except for the rolling damage with the oil, which of course was a direct hit on the mummy because where was he going to go? They just had to roll damage on the thing. And then I had to make a whole bunch of rolls because the treasure that was in the sarcophagi had to save
versus normal fire.
Yeah, so they lost a couple of scrolls in there. The gold, some of the gold failed at saving throws, so it fused into a big lump. Whatever.
Yeah.
So they lost some of the treasure. Okay, that was the price they paid. But what level were these guys? Honestly, I don't remember. It was first, second, or third. They went high. That campaign never went high level.
I recall. I've heard the story as Kyle pointed out, and it's a good story. It's a damn fine. Both DMing and playing story, and it dovetails very nicely into what I've been telling you guys, particularly over the last couple of episodes, about non-linear thinking outside the box and approaching the game, with an eye to understanding the dangers your characters might face. But they were, as I recall, Kyle, second and third level respectively. I think the magic user was 2 and your fighters were like 3 each.
It might have been. That's the highest they would have been, third level. The thing is, even if these guys were first level with 1 hit point each, they still could have done that.
Yep.
Because Hold Portal is first level spell.
Yep.
You cast that one today, even if that had been his only spell that day. And anyone can buy oil when they start up the campaign. And a rock drill, they just had to think to ask. It's not on the list of equipment, but they just had to think to ask. I was like, well, okay, yeah, that's reasonable. Drill 3 locks. And I figured it wouldn't matter because generally when, the reason for picking, like anyone can open a chest or whatever, everyone's got an axe of lock picking. It's just that it makes a lot of noise and it takes time. The skill of the thief is that they can do it quickly and quietly. So I thought if they want to sit there for half an hour drilling into some iron lock with their rock drill and ruining half a dozen rock drill bits, and while they're doing that, I'll be making wandering monster checks and stuff. If they really want to do that, okay, good for them. As it happened, they didn't drill through any locks. They just drilled through into 2 sarcophagi. And as I said, the price they paid for that, their approach was that they did lose some of the magical treasure. Some of the stuff got ruined. However, they were quite willing to do that because mummies are nasty things with their 1d12 hit. Mummy could easily wipe out the entire party, just one of them, let alone 2.
It's mummy rot, fear, and at that low level, they would be affected by fear. It's mummy rot, fear, and then a 1 to 12 punch, as you point out. This again, this is about AD&D education, not AD&D versus the World Edition warring. But at no point did Kyle have to say, do any of your characters have the engineering skill?
Yeah.
Give me an engineering check. At no point did he did the characters have to have to go out and make a bunch of die rolls to successfully drill rock. Now, I might have done a rock versus metal saving throw to see if that drill bit broke. But then if you had a bag of 10 drill bits, how How many times?
Yeah, he had a bunch of drill bits, so I didn't make him do a roll. But what I did do was a wandering monster check. Because this is going to take a while, and the mummies are inside going, trying to get out. So they're making a bit of noise in that, and the player's cackling madly to himself. So a wandering monster check. That was the die roll that I did. But they didn't have to make a die roll to do it.
Yes.
They did it. It was just going to take a while. But yeah, so it didn't matter what their stats were. They could have all been first level with 1 hit point and straight 3s on their stats. It wouldn't have mattered in that particular circumstance. So that's my contention, that the player wits and the game master's approach is much, much more important than a +1 or 2 here or there. And so that's why I didn't even roll up passable. I did his stats all exactly average. Technically, the stats are under average because the average is 10.5, and the hit points are over average because an average of 1d10 is 5.5. But and I gave him average starting wealth as well.
Well, you guys aren't going to have to watch Dad and Uncle fight in the front yard at the barbecue over this, but I will say preferentially I'm a 4 die 6 drop lowest kind of guy, particularly because if you play passable long enough, it's going to come to the point, and I realize it's not right now, but let me bury the lead a little bit before I get too far into this. The method Kyle's describing, 3d6 down the line, 46 discard lowest, a whole bunch of 3d6s and pick your favorites, generate 6 characters and pick your favorites. They're all fine. They're all fine. They can all generate fun, playable characters. But if Kyle played passable for 4 or 5 years and got really attached to the character, that's when the stats start to matter. His chance of surviving a resurrection is lower than if he had a 15 in con. Or if the evil wizard throws polymorph as an offensive spell.
I chose to make him an elf because I couldn't decide between fighter and thief. And I thought, okay, make him an elf, because what I really want to do is be able to, if I surprise people, I want to be able to run away if they're tougher than me.
Right. Because what did we say yesterday, guys? Avoid unnecessary encounters. Yeah,
and at low level, that's very, very important.
Yep.
Elves are limited to 7th level as fighters. They can never be name level or lord level. And elven fighters with less than 17 strength are limited to 5th level as well. But here's the thing. You have to survive to that level anyway. Mm-hmm. And my experience is actually that the ones with better stats don't survive as long. Well, in the fighter types anyway, in the fighter, or even sometimes thieves and definitely clerics as well. They don't survive as well, because what happens is players go, I've got 18 strength, so if I've got 1850 strength and I've got 10 hit points, I'm going to charge right to the front of the combat. If I've got 10 strength and 6 hit points, I might hang back a bit and start thinking about what I'm doing. So my experience is that the players with the characters that got really good stats, they don't last as long. The character's more likely to get killed because they take more chances with them. Obviously not true with like an 18 intelligence magic user or something, but it's definitely true of the fighter types and the clerics and sometimes the thieves as well. They just don't last as long. And the other thing is mega campaigns like Bill's with a dozen players lasting over many years aside, most campaigns don't last that long. If your campaign's not going to last long enough for you to get to even 3rd level, it doesn't really matter if you're limited to 5th or something, or 8th or whatever. It doesn't matter.
Granted.
So, most campaigns don't last that long.
And there's absolutely historical precedent for that. I mean, Gygax back in 74, 75 and so on, he had a floating group of like 22 players sometimes in his home. I can't even imagine that. With like him DMing at one end of the table, or Rob Kuntz or Jim Ward or somebody down at the other end DMing the other end of the table, and you'd have people like, oh, I got to drive from Sheboygan down to Winnetka. Can I stop by your house and play D&D? Sure, I mean, so you might show up with the original Dungeons and Dragons official character sheet in hand, with no expectation of making it past the evening, but the fun of saying, yeah, I walked into a scything blade trap that was disguised, it was an illusory, naked, beautiful Frazetta-esque maiden reclining on a wall, and I ran up to embrace her and got cut into 3 uneven triangular pieces. And you have a laugh about it, and you don't cry that you spent 5 hours on a backstory. And one of the things, the culmination of the sketch of character creation and preparing to play Dungeons and Dragons as we've been exploring, is that, and Kyle, really, I'm not going to steal your thunder. I want you to put this in your own very eloquent words. Is character backstory is kind of bunk.
Yeah.
That what you
my thing is me as game master, I'm not going to subject you to boxed text. Don't you subject us to character backstory.
Boxed text, the deadliest wandering monster of all.
Yeah. Yeah, well, player backstory is the box text for players, isn't it?
Now, don't misunderstand me. And I mean, these are things that are off menu. You're not going to find, box text, character backstory, so on, etc., being discussed in the Dungeon Master's Guide or in the Player's Handbook. But if a player comes to me and they're like, okay, I know we're playing first edition. Here's my character. I wrote up something about him before then. I'm like, cool, that's awesome. That can go in my card file. All right. But if you said, Bluto the Merciless wiped out everybody in your family, and I'm high and dry for ideas as a DM, and we'll talk more about this when we get over to talking about DMing AD&D, which I'm really looking forward to doing with Kyle also. I might just go, Bluto the Merciless, huh? Well, it's funny, you should have written his name down. And then, I can go from there, but I'm not looking for a copy of The Lord of the Rings with a character sheet taped to the top of it. You don't have to do that. You've got enough fun that's coming your way than to worry about whether or not your character was Prince of the Seven Kingdoms or dumbass McNosepicker, the pig shit farmer, before he realized he could make more money by putting the pointy end of a piece of metal into an orc. Excuse me, a society non-specific humanoid type creature of evil mien. Don't want to rile up the folks at YouTube there, Wizards of the Coast. # cancel the Dungeon Delver. So when they come to cancel me, Kyle, you gonna post like a Twitter, like a 30 Twitter message weepy thing about what a horrible person I am?
Oh no, I thought you were going to say, will I post an obituary? Yeah, I'd post an obituary.
Here lies Bill. He never got to play. He only DM'd. Rest in peace. Rest in pepperoni. So let's talk a little bit then, Kyle, and I'm gonna kind of leave it up to you, Bose. # blame Bill. Yes. So I know you've gotten a chance to skim the videos. You kind of know where we are in the textbook, so to speak.
Yep.
Do you want to open with a new type of character, since we built Bob the Fighter and we've seen average the fighter, or I'm sorry, adequate the fighter perform in B2? Do you want to? Shall we?
I want to continue with Passable the veteran. I want him to go and get the treasure. He's done the scouting. I want him to go and get the treasure.
Okay. All right. Let me just.
So you guys probably didn't watch. It was a couple of months ago, but basically, so it's the Keep on the Borderlands, the Caves of Chaos, which, funnily enough, I've never played through. I've never owned the module. I've never played through it. I've done Temple of Elemental Stupidity and all those sorts of ones, but not the not Keep on the Borderlands. And so I made the character with these straight 10s, and the image comes courtesy of Hero Forge, who make miniatures. I've never bought one of their miniatures, but when you're modeling it up, they show you an image, and so I did that. Because he's just a guy with a spear, and he actually has a long sword, but they only let you carry one weapon. He has a spear and a shield, and a long sword, and leather armor, and that's a cigar that he's chewing on. He's actually an elf, but you can't see the pointy ears because he's got the hood on, and those are his stats. Elves have got 90% resistance to sleep and charm. They're automatically +1 to hit with longsword and bow. Hey, just like having 17 strength. Except they don't have the, well, like 16 strength. Yeah, like having 17 strength, but without the damage bonus. They've got infravision up to 60 foot. They'll spot secret doors 1 in 6 times simply by passing through, and 2 or 3 times out of 6 if they're examining closely. When they're alone or 90 foot ahead and not in metal armor, they surprise on a 4 in 6, which is pretty powerful. Or 2 in 6 if opening a door. So even if he's smashing down a door, he still surprises them a third of the time.
Yeah, when you see that a scrawny little leaf ear kicked in the door, that can be quite a surprise.
Yeah. And all elves speak Common, Elvish, Gnome, Halfling, Goblin, Hobgoblin, Orcish, and Gnoll. I'm not sure how they get all these, but they must have a hell of a language school. Perhaps that's why they have to live hundreds of years. Armor and shield, backpack. Most importantly, and yep, he's got a rock drill for locks. He's got a rock drill. He's got oil, and yeah, he's got a stack of oil, 3 on him and 2 on his backpack. And he's got men at arms. He hired men at arms with a leather spear, shield, and they've got 6 darts each, you know, on their shield. And he's got all the usual stuff of he's got all the usual stuff, 50 foot of rope and all that sort of stuff. And anyway, so he went and he scouted out the area. He looked at a few of it because there's a number of entrances to the caves. There's a kind of a valley or gully and a number of entrances, and one was apparently kobolds. One was apparently across the way was apparently goblins, and another was an ogre, and then there was another further up, which seems to be troglodytes. It's all stinky and stuff. And then there's a bunch of trees and stuff in between. So there may be other entrances or exits, but Passable hasn't found them yet. So then he went and poked around the kobolds, the ogre, and the goblins, and went hunted. He and the men at arms went and hunted local pigs, and then hung them up as an offering to these guys, because you can parley. You can see who's friendly, who's willing to talk. The goblins came out and sort of just looked around surreptitiously. It was the middle of the day; they don't see well in the daytime. Mm-hmm. They're night creatures. Hoods down, looking around surreptitiously, grabbed it and ran back inside. They weren't willing to stay and chat. The ogre came out and chatted, and it was a bit threatening, but he chatted. He wasn't that chatty. And then he took the pig and went back inside, and the kobolds came and took it, and when we were around, then they attacked us. Seemed to be a bit more nervous disposition. So they attacked us. There was a brief fight. I said to the guys, subdue. I wanted to take prisoners, subdue rather than kill. Unfortunately, kobolds don't have many hit points, so you're trying to subdue them and you accidentally stave in their skull. But we got one. And we took him away and had a chat. So we've been regularly taking offerings to the ogre, because as far as we can tell, he's the single most dangerous thing there. So we've been regularly taking offerings of food to the ogre, and he never seems to want to chat. He's not very friendly chappy, but at least he's not attacking us. And he just comes and takes it and tells us to piss off, and then goes back inside and eats it. And I assume has a post, like after a Sunday roast, have a little nap afterwards. We just chatted to the kobold. He couldn't tell us much because they're not really smart, and they don't even have words for humans and dwarves and stuff. It's just like kobold, bigger kobold, huge kobold. So, yeah, and that's about where we had got to.
Now, specific granular details in the capturing of a kobold and running the hell out of the kobold caves. Adequate had gotten stabbed in the back and had taken 4 points of damage. So, he was, one of the men-at-arms was stitching you up with some cat gut, telling you, maybe buy yourself a suit of plate mail when you get the money saved up. And the kobold that you captured is more than willing to go in and negotiate, be your mouthpiece for you. If you send him into the caves and tell us fellows what reasonable folks you guys are.
Mm-hmm.
So,
now, am I wrong, or has the ogre not been very nice to the kobolds in the past?
There's no real interaction per se with the kobolds regarding the ogre. That would be any kind of conclusion you would draw for yourself.
Mm-hmm. They're neighbours, but they don't talk.
Yeah.
This is such a funny little ecosystem here in the Caves of Chaos, where you've got kobolds and goblins and ogres and troglodytes all living together side by side. It's little United Nations of the humanoid world.
It is. There's I very often draw analogies between Doom 1 and Doom 2 and first edition AD&D, because the two Johns, Romero and Carmack, were heavily influenced by Dungeons and Dragons when they were creating the scenario that surrounds Doom, the hows and whys, and even some of the mapping. Romero once said to me that Tomb of Horrors was his favorite AD&D module of all time, and given some of John Romero's Doom maps, I can definitely see that influence on there. But they have a level in Doom 2 called Monster Condo, and it actually is kind of this U-shaped construction of rooms around a central pit of toxic slime that you'll die if you fall into and can't find the secret elevator to get out of. But yeah, so that's essentially what this is. This is a monster condo.
So talking to my pet kobold, what does he think about? Like, does he think his guys might be willing to, if the ogres, say in a post-roast and or drunken stupor, they might be willing to go in and have a go at him? With us, of course, and split the treasure. Because I'm sure he'll have stuff.
Okay.
He's the biggest one here. He's going to have stuff.
Well,
does he think his guys might go for that?
He responds in his growly, koboldy voice. Maybe we get put upon by a lot of the larger monsters. The bigger kobolds pick on us. So let me go back in the cave, and I will ask them if they will join you. And then we can kill the big kobold. Nice milk-skinned kobold, good friend, and he he pats you on the knee, basically. Kobold's like that tall. Nice, good milk skin kobold friend. Pat, pat, pat.
I suspect it might be better for us to go with him. Might be better to go with him to negotiate, because like he might go in and they'll just go, "Who have you been talking to, you idiot?" and slap him around. Yeah, so I'll go to the entrance with him and then ask him to bring the kobold chief out to talk to. So I'll go to the entrance and then I'll have my guys sit like 30 feet back or whatever, so they could be a shield wall for me to run back to if necessary. I'll go and I'll take the usual boar offering.
Okay. Well, the men-at-arms just kind of sadly shake their heads and say, "You're going into a kobold lair by yourself. I wouldn't."
I'm losing your audio there, Bill.
Uh-oh. Can you hear me now? Is that a little better?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. It is, yeah.
All right. That's with the filters on it. Sometimes it's if I turn my head away at the wrong moment, it'll fade out a little bit. It's that good at keeping background noise out that it even considers me background noise sometimes. So yeah, the men-at-arms are... I wouldn't do that, boss. I wouldn't go in there.
I'm not going to go in there. I'm just going to go to the entrance.
Okay.
You got to take risks. You got to take risks.
All right. How far back do you want your men-at-arms?
Like I said, about 30 foot back, because there's like a sort of a mini forest there, isn't there?
So yeah. There's great clumps of trees here and there in the bottom of the ravine. Let me look at the map and see where that's going to put them. They are both at once concerned and comforted by the trees. Yeah, 30 feet back from that entrance will put them just at the edge of the copse of trees that is in the center.
So essentially the idea is to set up so that if anyone does come at them, they have to either go around trees and take a longer route or come directly at them in the shield wall kind of thing. You know what I mean? Like if there's like the classic two trees that you put your hammock between.
Yeah.
If they stood between those kind of, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I don't expect it to be a perfect defense, but just to slow them down a bit to give us a chance to run like hell if necessary.
Yep. Basically getting 2 extra non-fighting men on each side of them. All right. So they will stay there. Let me... using a digital die roller, so...
I go with my pet kobold, and I put the boar down by the entrance, and I step back. I step about 5-10 feet back, and I wait while he goes in, because I want to talk to the kobold chief.
All right. He goes in. You wait about a turn, and you hear little footsteps from within the cave. Being outside, your infravision is ruined, but you do hear a differently pitched growly voice in the cave call back out to you. "You want parley?"
Yes, I say in, it would be goblin or something we were speaking. I can't remember.
All right. Staying well within the shade of the cave, with spears and swords drawn, coming down in 2 single-file columns down the sides of the cave wall, There are a couple of groups of kobolds. We'll say that there's 10 total. So you got 5 on the left, 5 on the right, and they're hugging the walls. You don't see Runty, the one you sent in. And
I figure I've burned him, so
yeah.
it burned him in the agent sense,
right? And the spy sense, yes. You've gotten all the use out of him you're going to. So the one in the head of the right-hand column doesn't look any more remarkable than any of the other kobolds, but he's the one doing the speaking, and he growls at you in a pidgin of goblin, common, and kobold. You think kobold. What you want, talkie?
Well, I approach open-handed. After all, this is the alignment sign of neutral.
Okay.
So I approach open-handed so that I don't have to yell at him. And I say, that evil ogre, he's been sending us to fight you. Because remember, it's like 3 or 5 or something have been killed and got eaten by the ogre. You know, because we gave the bodies to the ogre to eat. When we couldn't find boars, we gave them kobolds. The ogre has been sent. It wants us to fight you for food, to kill you, so he can eat you. And he's too lazy even to come and do it himself. But I think he might eventually. I think he is your enemy, and he is a danger.
Ogre not
whenever we
Ogre not bothered us before. Why him start now?
Yeah, I think he's hungry. I think he's hungry. I think maybe he doesn't get along with the goblins anymore, and he's hungry.
He narrows his eyes and leans out on his spear a little bit, like it's a staff, and says, "You got plan, kill ogre?"
Yes. Every time he has a big feed, afterwards he goes and has a sleep. So I think we give him a big feed of boar or deer, that sort of thing. We give him a big feed, we wait for him to go and sleep, and then we get him. And we split his treasure.
This big complicated plan. He says something in kobold and...
but kobold's smart. You can do it.
Kobold's smart. We small, but we many. He stamps his spear butt on the floor and says, "Me send for mighty kobold king. You, come here. Tell king plan. Him not like sunlight."
All right, what the hell, I'll go in.
All right.
Wait out here, boys. If I'm not back by sundown, go back to the keep.
Alrighty.
I say, you give your word, I am safe. This is Parley.
Well, as you are... Let me see. Yeah, as you are approaching, they're sizing you up, and I mean with them, it's it's like that. He says, "Parlay, I no stab you. Kobold,
Parley,
kobold, 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 no stab you."
Yeah, because the way I see it, I believe they're lawful evil. So they're evil, but they're lawful, so they keep their word.
You hope.
I hope that the law applies to big, milky, white kobolds too.
Yes.
I've got to take the chance.
All right. He points
So
down.
I go in, and I go inside, and I try not to demonstrate my elevated heart rate.
Okay. He points down the hall. It goes in about 30 feet. They don't have light sources. With your back to the cave entrance and this very dim area, your infravision is coming online, so to speak. You kind of get. It's like when you come out of the sun into the house. You got to blink for a minute to adjust. So you're kind of getting that, and he points towards this T intersection. He goes, "You go forward, go snot hand way." Kobolds have snot hand and shit hand. Everybody knows that, Kyle. Come on.
But are they predominantly right or left-handed?
You'd have to ask the kobolds.
I say, well, for us, this snot hand. For milky white kobolds, this the snot hand. This the shit hand. Same for you?
He bares teeth and says, "Go that way!" And points to... Looking north, he points to the right.
Okay, so I'll go to the right.
All right. You go in another 20 feet, and the floor gives way. You suffer falling damage, as it is a 10-foot deep pit. The kobolds have a long-standing tradition of being tricky bastards and not liking elves at all. And true to his word, none of the kobolds attacked you. You suffer 5 points of falling damage.
Yep, so I'll be unconscious then.
All right. A great deal of time passes, during which you can only surmise that your men-at-arms follow their fail-safe orders and return back to the keep.
See, guys, it wouldn't matter what my stats are. Nobody's safe from a 10-foot pit.
We'll just kind of fast forward a little bit and say, you are an honored guest at Kobold Dinner. You're not there to appreciate your point of honor, and yet, more in a larger way, you are. Advanced Dungeons and Dragons First Edition, guys, the game where today's adventurer is tomorrow's kobold shit.
Well, I hope the ogre eats them all.
Well, they didn't pick up the pig, so if he smells it from across the ravine and comes looking, it might trigger the internecine war that you wanted to.
Now I want the ogre. Now I want to play the ogre.
So the let me minimize my PDF reader there. So class, what did Kyle do wrong? Actually, no, Kyle didn't do anything wrong. He parlayed. He avoided unnecessary fights. I mean, he talked the kobolds down from murdering his face with weapons, which there were certainly enough kobolds versus 0-level men-at-arms and a first-level fighter to make it a highly touch-and-go fight.
They only had to hit me once.
Well, granted, but you had your men-at-arms. Let's see. Adam Black says, a very lawful evil solution. Yeah, well. The kobold god Kurt Lumac said, hey, we're small, but we're numerous. I'll teach you guys how to mine, and you can use that to your advantage. And they did. They have a pit trap 30 feet in at the T intersection.
Trusted the kobold to tell the truth, which is not in. Yeah, well, but a lawful one might. But anyway. But it didn't matter whether it was going left or right. There was a 20-foot pit in the way before going left or right.
10-foot pit. 10-foot pit.
10-foot pit, yeah.
Now, I did lend Kyle a little bit of a hint in pointing out that the kobolds were pressed against the walls when they came down the tunnel. They didn't just round the tunnel and come forward as a big group, which you think tactically would have been more the sound thing to do. But I'm not.
No, I thought they were trying to do a pincer sort of thing.
And that's not an unreasonable point of view either. So, we raise our glasses to the fallen hero, and that is a perfect example of the dice just got you. I was rolling reactions. Kyle was parlaying. I was rolling reactions in the background, and he was the kobold went in and basically said, yeah, there's one elf out there that thinks he's going to get us to go attack the ogre. And they're like, don't worry about it. All right, you can have an extra, you can have a couple extra ham hocks tonight. We'll take care of this. So the captain of the kobold guard went around there and was impressed enough to not start attacking that reaction roll to parlay. But he knew the trapdoor was there, and he was not going to bring it. He didn't send the guy off to bring his king. He just sent somebody off to say, hey, when you hear the pit open and shut, be ready. Or if you hear the sounds of battle, come rushing forward with planks to put across the pit so more troops can move out here and attack the guy. So, but no, despite the outcome, guys, from an AD&D standpoint, Kyle did the right things. It just didn't quite work out.
Well, that's going to happen sometimes.
Yeah.
Because if it just gone into battle, then the dice could have gone against it. Even if you're third level fighter or something, and with a +1 sword, the dice can still go against you. And
yeah, I mean, and you make a good point. Consider, you run a third level fighter through this scenario. You've got a +1 sword. You've got a 16 strength. You've got 17 charisma, what have you, or even a paladin, but you got slightly less than average hit point rolls. You fought the kobolds. You got injured previously. That pit trap would have done 5 points of damage to anybody. Anybody.
Mm.
So it really... I mean, in a microcosm, that was an example of everything we talked about yesterday. Having a plan, sticking to the plan, executing the plan. If Kyle was running a party of like 5 adventurers, not just like telling the men at arms like, hey, hang back if I'm not back in 30 minutes, go back to the keep, look for a new boss. This would have been a case of, okay, there's a kink in the plan, but now we react to it, and because certainly all 5 characters wouldn't have marched, marched in a line.
No, one would have gone in to talk, and then the other 4 would hang back, and because there'd be another 4 hanging back, all armed to the teeth, the kobolds might have said, "Oh, and don't step in the trap."
Yeah. Kind of step around when you go around the corner on the snot hand side.
Yeah.
So
even if they hadn't, and somebody had fallen in, there would have been another 4 people to come and rescue them. So
yeah, it exactly. I mean, even if your fighter had fallen in and had taken 5 points of damage, now it's the other adventurers stepping into play, and like, okay, we got to remember to get him out of that pit, but for now, let's massacre some kobolds. So,
well, that's all right. The next adventurer will know that there's a pit there, because those men at arms are going to go back and talk about that they heard this. So the next adventurer who goes there will hear tale.
Our boss went in. We heard, "I regret nothing," and then he never came back out. All right, just kind of catching up on the chat. Yeah, it was a lawful evil decision. Let's see. He trusted kobolds to tell the truth, which is his snot hand. Chris said that's the way it should work. I don't know if you're talking about me killing Kyle's character with a pit trap or trusting the snot hand or whatever. But well, yes, I will accept the compliment, and Kyle will accept the compliment. Speaking of compliments, this just kind of came out of left field. Somebody posted a link to these streams on the AD&D subreddit. There is a first edition. Well, we have to share room with the second edition, guys. Subreddit. It's just called r/AD&D. And yeah, somebody was like, "Oh, dude, I love your voice." I'm like, really? Are you like listening with some kind of special filter on to make me sound good? I don't. This anyway. So thank you, random stranger. Yeah. So let's see. It's and Adam here says it's not the first time I've seen Caves of Chaos kobolds in the game end the game early. They get underestimated a lot. Yeah. Do not underestimate kobolds ever. I think Gary could have done a lot worse than to just like slip that sentence. In a broad sense, he does in the player's handbook about being careful about certain tricks and traps. But yeah, he probably should have put like the last line of text in there. Do not underestimate kobolds. Like, P.S. Do not underestimate kobolds.
Well, I didn't think that they'd want to go and attack the ogre, but I thought I'd then go and talk to the ogre and tell him that they were going to. So
that is a very Austria during the Cold War thing to do, and I salute you for that plan. I don't want to say anything.
And if he did go and fight the kobolds, I was going to sneak into his cave and look for his treasure. Well, it was either that. I was going to see how he was going, and if he was going well, I'd just follow him along and try to take the credit and share the treasure with him. And if he was going badly, I would then run into his cave and steal his treasure before the kobolds could come and get it.
That was the plan. There's an apocryphal story about... I read years ago, some guy adventuring in his dungeon master's completely illogical caves of nonsense mega dungeon where it's like room of orcs, room of trolls, room with a single huge ancient adult red dragon in it, and so on. And the thief scouting ahead went into the dragon's lair, and he had picked red dragon as a language. Like, he had a high enough int to pick red dragon for his language, and they did the whole Bilbo meeting Smaug thing, and so the dragon was like, well, okay, why are you here? And the player, leaning heavily on flattery tactics to stave off being barbecued by dragons, which I thought it was a brilliant move. He said, well, I don't want to cause any problems, but I was down in that cave of orcs, and they said you were an asshole. and so the dragon, the game master rolls some improbable reaction rolls, and the dragon says, "They what?" and goes stomping down there and kills all the orcs, while the thief quickly picks up the choice items that he can find in the dragon's pile and buggers off. So, but that's the way you do it. I mean, you didn't say, okay, men, form a flying wedge and we're just gonna charge in there and kill every kobold we see, which is certainly a way to do it. If your plan, we talked about plans and planning in the player's handbook. If your plan is to genocide all the kobolds, Then yes, men form a flying wedge, and we're going to.
That's my next plan, damn it.
That's your next plan. Kyle gets all like solid gold reaction rolls from the kobolds. Welcome, friend. Kill them. He gets to hear the kobold battle cry of "Not in the face, not in the face."
I've got a lot of sympathy for what was his name? The guy in Gamers 2 Darkness Rising, the guy who plays the monk. He's like, no, Dad, no module has ever beaten me. We're going to do it again. I got a lot of sympathy for that guy.
Yes, I can definitely appreciate it. So, a hard lesson having been learned and earned in the Caves of Chaos. Let us turn back to the player's handbook then. And so Kyle has created Adequate. I created Bob. And I think we're going to get to the weird, cool classes and talk about them in depth. I don't think per se character creation, like roll the dice and so on and etc. You guys get that. I would think they get it by now, Kyle. But I want to look at the class, and if you want to generate a class while we look at the class, that's absolutely a-okay. But so we looked at fighter. Let's get into some spell slinging. You know, I mean, D&D isn't just about going out and being a quasi mythical Roman, right? You gotta get some magic in there. You know, some magic and wonder, some Doug Henning up your D&D game, illusion. And let's talk about the magic user class and best practices for the magic user class for first
Hide behind the fighter.
Advanced Dungeons.
We start.
Tactically, yes. And this is going to take us a little bit into the Dungeon Master's Guide from a learning perspective, guys. So I'm going to scroll down. If there is a desire, if in chat you guys want to see the player's handbook, as I'm looking at this, let me know. Kyle or I will put the players up on the screen.
I don't have the PDF, so you want to.
You don't have. Okay, all right. So I will put the player's handbook up on the screen if you guys want to see it. But I'm gonna go over because we're gonna talk about the big four, and then we're gonna look at the subclasses, and then the standalone unique classes of monk and bard also. But and magic user is a little bit strange, not just in the sense of, you know, they can command all the, you know, phenomenal cosmic power. There's a little bit of a kink in magic user, and I talked about this before. Joshua Ford pointed it up about the half orc stats don't match up in the book properly with each other, like the general stat discussion, strength, intelligence, wisdom, dex, con, ka, and the limitations that those supposedly give half orcs. Then when you get over to the half orc section, it belies that. So we run into a similar problem with magic user and understanding spells, but we're going to talk about that when we get there. So just be aware of that. So the magic user. We are, if you're following along in your players, we're on page 25, right-hand column on the top. It is absolutely essential to have a high intelligence. High intelligence, Kyle. High intelligence. For a character who is a magic user, especially if a broad selection of spells is to be had. And this
doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. I mean, you only need 10 intelligence to use 5th level spells. When can you use 5th level spells? When you're 9th level. How many characters get to 9th level? Especially when they've got 1d4 hit points per level. It's a 9th level anyway. So even if you got 9
I have
intelligence,
lots of
doesn't matter.
9th level players in my game, sir.
Yeah, well, if you're a soft DM, then they get lots of treasure and stuff. And
anyway. All right. So, having a high intelligence as a magic user, generally speaking, is of great benefit, because there's a chance. First of all, your DM is going to throw scrolls at you unless you drill into the container they're in and then pour oil in and set them on fire. Your DM is going to have scrolls and other spell sources, like you slay an evil magic user, you get that spell book, a nice hefty grimoire full of spells to transfer and in your own handwriting and your own formula, whatnot, into your own spell book. And we'll talk about spell books too. The lower your intelligence as a magic user, the less your chance of comprehending a spell is.
That's the main thing, yeah.
Now, you can go back as you level and try again. Like, it's like a doctor. A doctor in pre-med might read a book on cerebral microsurgery and be like, yeah, this is a little bit above my head, no pun intended. And then when he gets his residency, his specialization, his doctorate, and so on and etc., he goes back and looks at that material and is like, now I understand this. Same thing with a magic user in D&D. You can take another pass at the material. In fact, let's look at intelligence and how that pertains to the magic user before we dive into that too much in the class.
You should probably share it. You should probably share the...
I will pop that up in here. We did look at the stats, but we kind of glossed over intelligence because with Bob, we only really talked about intelligence from a standpoint of extra languages. So let me bring that up. I have to see if I can. Okay, there it is, covering me up. I will kind of shrink that down a little bit, but if you guys... I'll put that between Kyle and I. If you guys are following along, we are looking at intelligence over on page 10. So, intelligence table 2, this is what pertains to our magic user. An ability score of 9, you've only got a 35% chance, again, D100, to know each listed spell. The minimum number of spells per level that you can have are 4. The maximum number is merely 6. So the 9 intelligence magic user, he doesn't exactly have the broad repertoire.
And for reference, you'll usually start with 3.
Yes.
You'll usually start with 3 for reference.
That is correct. We'll when we move on with the magic user a little bit, we'll start into that. And before anyone asks, if you're coming from a later version of D&D, or even if you played D&D with cantrips, I tend to not. And I think it would kind of muddy the waters in the discussion to launch too much into cantrips. So an intelligence of 10 to 12 gives you the same chance, 45% chance to know each listed spell. 5 is the minimum number of spells, 7 is the maximum number. A 13 to 14, 55%. Minimum is 6, maximum is 9. 15 to 16, minimum is 65%. Minimum is 7, maximum is now 11. 17 jumps up another 10% to 75. Minimum is 8, maximum is 14. An 18 intelligence again, jumps up another 10%, 85% chance, 9 spells minimum per level, 18 maximum. Now, it denotes a 19 intelligence or more. How is that possible? Elves gain a +1 to intelligence on creation. If you roll an 18, if you're bound and determined to play an elven magic user, and you roll an 18 and you park it in intelligence, whether you're doing 3d6 down the line or 4d6 arranged to taste, your elven magic user will start with an intelligence of 19. Then 95% chance to know any spell. Note, it's still not 100. You still may find a scroll, even of a puny second level spell you just don't happen to have in your catalog yet, but you'd like to. Oh, a 96. Gotta wait till next time. But your minimum number of spells per level is 10. Maximum number of spells per level is all. You can know all of the spells in a given level. So, very handy. And then Gary notes, this is all the way at the bottom, just across from Dave Sutherland's kind of funny demonstration of the 9 intelligence magic user versus the 18 intelligence magic user. Each and every magic user must employ the table in order to determine which and how many of each group of spells by level he or she can learn. At first, only the first level group of spells are checked. Successive level groups are checked only when the character reaches the level at which the appropriate group of spells is usable by him or her. What that means is, if we go, and we'll cover the rest of that, but if we go and we look at spells, and don't want to blow past the start, it is just after equipment. A little bit to scroll there, getting scoliosis. So if you go and you look on page 41, there are 30 first level spells. You would pick which of those spells. Let's say you are intelligence 9. The maximum number of spells you can know per level is 6. You would pick which 6 spells you would like to be able to understand. When I say know, I don't mean memorize. I don't mean you got ready up in your head to cast. I mean which 6 that if you find a scroll, you go, oh, this is jump. This scroll is identify. This scroll is push, and this scroll is unseen servant. You go through the list and you check each spell. You roll percentile dice. In the case of our 9 magic user, you roll each time. Now, there are 30 first level spells. You have a 35% chance to know. You have a minimum number of 4 spells at first level with a 9 intelligence that you can know. If you go through the list and you're like, yeah, I want to make sure that I know sleep, burning hands, shocking grasp, and Tensor's floating disc. Okay, let's roll it. 41, 56, 89, 72. You don't know any of them. Pick 4 more, and so on, and etc. And if you run through the whole list... Kyle, you got something?
Yeah, I was going to say, I've approached it a little bit differently. Because the Dungeon Master's Guide has got it talks about starting with a random spells, starting with a random offensive spell, random defensive spell, random miscellaneous spell, plus of course read magic. And it's a random 1d10, and then the 10th entry on each is that you get to choose from amongst those. So you start with 3 spells, and then we just don't worry about it until you come across another spell. So if you come across Magic Missile for the first time in a scroll or a spell book or whatever, and want to copy it across, then we do the roll. And you go through and you just note each time. So if you then come across another copy of Magic Missile later, if you failed on to understand it this time. You've got 9 intelligence, 35% chance you roll 37. You don't understand this magic missile. If you come across another copy of magic missile later, you don't get to check again as long as you're still the same level. If you go up a level, you can check again. But otherwise, you just keep going through systematically the whole list. And if you go through the whole list and then you still don't have at least 4 spells, then you get to have another go at them. Because it's a little bit different in the Dungeon Master's Guide, the way it presents it.
That's true.
I'll find the page reference. It's a little bit different. So,
sure.
So that saves the player having to roll for each one when they start the game.
Well,
because the way the player's handbook puts it, it's like, how many spells do you start with? It's just if you go through, and you'll start with at least 4 or 5 or 6 or whatever, depending on your intelligence. That's the way the player's handbook tries to present it. The Dungeon Master's Guide presents it a little bit differently. So which do you go for? Well, it's the same. That's the great thing about AD&D, because it's full of contradictions. You can choose. So, acquisition recovery. It's pages 39 to 40 in the Dungeon Master's Guide.
All right. So there's literally just another approach. Do it by encounter, or you can do it all at once. To be honest, I've had players split the difference. I've had some that just wanted to front load and just have everything just done, just ready to go, and others that just wanted to do it at, just as they go, rather than potentially be screwed by cold dice, right? Because that's a fact. That's a reality. Cold dice, they can get you. So we got your minimum and maximum. And there's a note. If intelligence goes up or down for any reason and such change is relatively permanent, the magic user must check again as explained above for known grit. So, yeah, you find an Ioun stone that increases your int by 1. Go back. You may now have a shot at spells that you didn't before. Because, hey, you just dumped from int 9 into that sweet 10 to 12 bracket. And now your chance jumps up to 45. And your minimum number of spells is 5, and your maximum number becomes 7. So hey, if you get that +1 bump to int, go for it. And the last thing on int before we jump back to the magic user is acquisition of heretofore unknown spells. So as Kyle mentioned earlier, you do start with a very tiny handful of spells. I know basic and original Dungeons and Dragons and later Dungeons and Dragons presume that you've just, you're carrying around a New York City phone book of spells. And that it's just a case of, I know I can only cast 1 spell per day, but today that spell is Unseen Servant. Tomorrow it might be Ventriloquism. The next day it might be Identify. You have a set number of spells when your master kicks you out of his wizard's tower and says, I'm bored with you now. Go earn life on your own. Or you graduate and you get to move your tassel over on your mortarboard at Acme Upstairs Magic User College, City of Greyhawk, copyright 579. However it happens, you start out with a minimum number of spells. You always start out with read magic. You have to be able to read your own spell book. And then there's 3 others that can either be assigned by the dungeon master, chosen by the player if the dungeon master is feeling particularly generous, or rolled randomly. The random roll may also give the player a chance to choose, because I think it's 3 lists of 9 possible spells, with the 10th being player chooses. And they are an offensive spell, which would be something like Sleep or Magic Missile, Shocking Grasp, Burning Hands, etc. A defensive spell, Shield, Spider Climb, Unseen Servant. No, actually, I think Unseen Servant is in Miscellaneous, but you get the idea. And then miscellaneous spells. In miscellaneous spells is the spell write. You must be able to scribe spells into your spell book as a magic user. If you don't have the right spell, not R-I-G-H-T, W-R-I-T-E, the first thing you need to do as a magic user is set about trying to acquire it, beg, borrow, or steal it. Get your hands on the spell right if you don't start the game with it. Otherwise, all the scrolls you find, all the magic books that you acquire from other magic users, they're all going to be one-time use assets only. Well, not the magic books, but you'll have to cast Read Magic and then wait a day and then read the one spell out of the magic user's book. You don't have to cast Read Magic to read your own spells out of your own spell book. But if you want to copy them and permanently put them in your own spell book, you have to. And to dip over into the Dungeon Master's Guide a little bit, that also requires special inks. Your Dungeon Master will tell you whether or not a town, city, village, what have you, has an apothecary that sells the special inks for you to write spells into your spell book. And if you're a lowly first level, I believe the first level is Prestidigitator, or is it Thaumaturgist?
Yeah. It's Prestidigitator. I can't even say it.
Prestidigitator. Just picture hash browns on a grill that you're mashing down with your fingers. Press your digits, taters.
Oh God.
I'm smart. That's I'm something anyway. So yes, you start out as a prestidigitator, and that's the 0 to 2,500 experience point range. You have a single 4-sided die. So I would say for hit points, 1 to 4 hit points, I would dare say that the second most important stat for a magic user is Constitution. Although if push comes to shove and you're facing a situation where you're being hit in melee or by ranged attacks, things have gone so far off the rails that having 6 hit points instead of 4 probably won't matter that much.
Well, you could also argue that dexterity would be better, because that adds to your AC. Is it better to be hit and be able to take it, or is it better not to be hit in the first place? I would argue the latter, but
so looking at the classes or level titles for the class of magic user, we have Prestidigitator, Evoker, Conjurer, Theurgist, Thaumaturgist, Magician, Enchanter, Warlock, Sorcerer, Necromancer, and Wizard is name level. Magic users at, I believe, 12th level or higher, construct a stronghold and clear the countryside in a 10 or 20 mile radius of all monsters, thus ruling an area much as a noble. If this is accomplished, a revenue of 5 silver pieces per inhabitant per month is generated to the territory ruled. So you can establish a stronghold when you become a 12th level wizard. And yes, folks coming from other versions of D&D, the title is magic user. There are not wizards and sorcerers and wild mages and so on and etc. The spells that they broke up into different spellcasting classes are all in one class in first edition Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. Now, years ago, a very funny author that I read online, Lore Sojberg, had a little ratings thing. He would rate certain things, and it was clear that Lore, being about my age, had played AD&D as a kid, because oftentimes he would turn to AD&D, and he rated the classes of Dungeons and Dragons, and he gave magic users a very poor rating because of the name. He said, you might as well call yourself, Mysterious Effects Coordinator. But magic user it is, and you do get all of the spells rather than some of the spells if you're a sorcerer, or some of the spells if you're a wizard, or a necromancer or whatnot. And I will point out, when we look at spells in a little bit, there are schools, but with some exceptions, they don't really impact play that much. They're almost more for role play rather than for anything to do with the game mechanics. Like, some spells are enchantments, some spells are necromancy, some spells are divining, and so on and etc. Interesting thing, and we'll see this when we get to clerics. Cure Light Wounds for clerics is a spell of the necromancy school. So let's look at the spell progression. And after the 11th level, you're only gaining 1 hit point per level. I might generously say that you also get your con bonus on that if you did use con as your second. You stuck that 16 in con instead of dex. But again, better to not be hit than to need it. So yes, looking at the spells usable by class. Now you might note that the spells stagger. It's not one spell at first level, one first level spell at first character level, one second level at second level, and 2 first. The curve is a lot more different than that. I'm not good at math. When I say curve, it just, like, that's it. So you start with 1 first level spell. And no, there is no bonus spells for high intelligence. And I do get asked this a lot, like, hey, clerics get a bonus spell or spells, or lots of bonus spells for having a very high wisdom. Why not do the same for magic users' intelligence? Magic user spells cover a much broader range of utility and flexibility. Generally speaking, clerics are defending or healing. There's Spiritual Hammer and Flame Strike, off the top of my head, are the only 2 things that clerics can bring to the table offensively. I mean, commands, if you learn Bless backwards, it's Curse, or Cause Light Wounds, you might make an argument about those. But magic user spells generally are a lot more martial, a lot more destructive. And I think it would... what do you think, Kyle? Do you think it would... Like, the power curve would just go completely off the rails if you said, okay, magic users, you've got an 18 intelligence, start with, 4 spells per day at first level?
I've done it, and I've even said they don't have to choose their spells, which they're going to load up in their, they don't have to stick it in their head like like an Atari 2400 cassette cartridge, nothing horrible happens, because the spells aren't at low level. The spells aren't very powerful anyway. I mean, so they get 2 magic missiles a day instead of 1. It's nothing horrible happens. It just means that they get two attacks that can hit. The real thing that I note about magic users is just in which spells they start with. Like, if you start with Sleep and Charm as a first level magic user, you're pretty set. You're doing pretty well.
Yeah.
Because, like, first level magic user, Sleep, those dozen kobolds that came up just go, Sleep, right, now I'm going to walk in. Or I'm going to cut all their throats, And Charm Person could have been used on the ogre, for example.
No.
No? Oh, that's right. You can't. It'll go on orcs and things, but not ogres and that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Ogre, you need Charm Monster, which is way higher level. But yeah. No, I understand what you're saying.
So meet the Kobold King, Charm Person. Okay, now the kobolds are on my side.
Yeah.
they're not suicidal or anything, but they're friendly, very friendly to me. So whereas you could roll up push, and it just doesn't do that much, So that's the real thing about, to me, about magic users. It's like, because if you let them have 2 spells a day, I'd rather have 1 sleep than 2 magic missiles.
Oh yeah, when I was a kid,
the power level between the different spells, even within a level, is just so huge in its effect. I mean, obviously, in the right circumstances, an imaginative player, even push could be really awesome. But generally speaking, for normal play, the level of the variance of effect of the spells in terms of how powerful they are is much greater than whether you have 1, 2, or 3 a day. That's much greater. It's a much bigger effect. So I've put that in when I've run games, and nothing horrible happened. It made people more keen to play magic users, if anything, even though, because they're sort of, it's a bit of an anticlimactic. You zap your 1 spell, okay, now I guess I'll throw some darts. It's there's only so much they can do.
Gandalf, you are not at first level in AD&D, that's for sure.
Hell no. But I mean, so I've allowed them to have extra spells. Plus, remember when they're doing 3d6 down the line, they're not going to get that many extra spells anyway. So, because I'm doing that as well. So that's the thing you've got to think of, guys. That when you do a house rule, how it plays into all the rest. So if you have 4d6 down the line, then giving magic users extra spells like clerics do is a much bigger deal than if you have 3d6. Because they're more likely to have a higher stat. And so, having a 16 and they've got 2 extra first level and 2 extra second level spells, that's much more significant than if they've just got a 12 stat and they've got no extra spells. You know what I mean? So if you the way you do the character generation also influences what the effect of changing, the spell use and so on will have. So that they all play into each other, and that's why when you start playing, you play it pretty straight. Don't change too many things and see how it all works, and then start tinkering with it, because it could be like a Jenga tower. You pull apart enough pieces and
just so. Just take a look at the chart there on page 26. Spells usable by class and level, magic user, and you see like game altering spells like alter reality, wish, and limited wish. They don't kick in until you have 16th, 17th, and 18th level characters. And you might say, well, good Lord, who plays long enough for that to be a factor? Hey, man, if you've got a great game going, it may. Don't knock it. Don't knock it.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to have a gander at the spells. We've been going for a good 90 minutes now, and I think there's 1 or 2 people still watching. But yeah, I want to take a look at the first level spells, but I also want to give the floor to Kyle and talk about what the well-heeled magic user is wearing in the summer of 2021, because I thought I had a handle on how to outfit and equip a character well. And then I saw how Kyle ran his magic users and realized I didn't know shit. So let's take a quick look at first level magic user spells. Let me give you guys a bad case of whiplash as we scroll down. Then Gary did cleric, then druid, then magic user. So I gotta scroll on.
What are you after? Are you talking about the spells or the equipment?
The spells. We're gonna take a quick gander at spells. I'm just gonna touch on those and give a few best practices on spell use. Here we go. Magic user spells. Okay, so what you should note about a spell is when you're looking at the spell stat block. We're on page 64, but this is anywhere in any spells. Is there's a level, there's a range with a double quote next to it. That is in model inches, which equates to feet. So in the case of effect normal fires, it is a half an inch or 5 feet per level. That is, every level your character is, the distance away from you that you can cast that spell, and that becomes very important with some higher level, more destructive spells. The further away you can cast it. Duration can be given in segments, that's tenths of a round, rounds, which is tenths of a turn, or turns, which is sixth of an hour. So if a spell's duration is 6 turns, it lasts an hour. In the case of effect normal fires, it's 1 round per level, which means a first level magic user who has effect normal fires, it will work for 1 full round. When we examine initiative, oh, God help us when we get to initiative, we'll talk about when exactly in the round spells are cast and what can happen, what their duration is in relation to when they are cast, and so on. Area of effect, that's a diameter or a square or an altitude. Fairly self-explanatory. In this case, area of effect normal fires can affect up to a 3-foot diameter fire. And there, with a single quote, it doesn't mean 3 feet on the table. You can't walk into a 28 millimeter square town and say, I want every fire in this city to burn out of control. No, it's talking about a 3-foot wide fire, guys. Components. You see VS. There are 3 components. Verbal, words you say, somatic, motions you do, material, things you have. In the case of effect normal fires, you speak words, you wave your hands. Which means if you're bound and gagged as a magic user, you can be Mordenkainen himself, and you really want to cast Time Stop to save your bacon. Well, if you've been hit on the back of the head and tied up and gagged, you're not gonna. There are no spells that just have like M or nil for components. You must speak, move, and or employ a physical item. Casting time, 1 segment. The way I rule it, and oh boy, it's gonna be so much fun. And again, when we get to initiative, the way I rule it, casting time begins on the die roll of the monsters of the opponents against the party, which means it takes longer for your mage to get to the point where they go alakazam. Now, what you will find is many, not all, many to most spells, casting time corresponds with the level they are. That's a good rule of thumb, but there are exceptions. Cure Light Wounds for clerics is a first level spell, but it takes 5 segments to cast. Saving throw, none. What that means is if I cast effect normal fires, the kobolds are all sitting around toasting rats on a stick, creep up behind them quietly, boom, I explode their fire, or I completely dim it down just to freak them out. They don't get a saving throw versus that. If I was casting Fireball instead of effect normal fires, which is cause abnormal fires, they would get a saving throw versus half, which wouldn't avail them versus kobolds. It would be enough damage to kill them. But that is what each category means. Now, effect normal fires, basically magic user can cause small fires from a torch to a lantern to Fires as large as a bonfire, 3-foot maximum diameter, to reduce in size and light to become matchlight, or increase so as to become as bright as a light spell. Reducing the fire will cut fuel consumption. Increasing the fire will double it. The heat output isn't altered. Burning hands is a fun one. Basically, you turn your hands into blowtorches. You just got to watch the range. The area of effect is it's listed as special. The jets are 3 foot in length and 120 foot arc in front of the magic user. Any creature in the area of flames takes a hit point of damage for each level. So that is a very dangerous spell in the hands, no pun intended, of, say, an 11th level magic user. First level magic user, maybe you're melting some candles or burning some books. Charm Person is a sticky one. That basically makes someone your friend, and they view everything you say in the most favorable light possible. It does not make them your mental slave forever. And it doesn't affect anything else. Kyle has the magic user. Kyle casts Charm Person on the Kobold King. The Kobold King views him very favorably and considers him to be a great ally. None of the other kobolds in the room think that. To him, he's still a milk-skinned giant kobold pointy ear. The men-at-arms, the Kobold Kings looked behind Kyle and was like, oh yeah, you guys can eat them, but not my buddy. Now, it's incumbent on Kyle to use his charm spell at that point to say, wait a minute, my friends are your friends, let them alone, and the king's going to consider it and probably go, okay. You cannot order someone to suicide while charmed. So the description, it's one of these ones that says refer to another spell. Oh,
and the second level druid spell, Charm Person or Mammal. Will affect any single person it is cast upon. The creature will then regard the magic user cast the spell as a trusted friend and ally to be heeded and protected. The spell does not enable them to control the charmed creature as if it were an automaton, but any word or action of them will be viewed in its most favorable way. Thus, a charmed creature would not obey a suicide command, but might believe them if assured that the only chance to save their life is if they hold back an onrushing red dragon for just a round or two. It does not empower you with linguistic capabilities beyond those you normally possess. So if you charm an orc and you can't speak orcish, then you grunt in a friendly way, I guess. I don't know. The duration of the spell is a function of their intelligence. So they get a new saving throw after a while. So if intelligence is 3 or less, they get saving throws every 3 months. If intelligence is 10, every 3 weeks. 19 or more, they get a saving throw every day. Yep. Yes. And it works against only persons: brownies, dwarves, elves, gnolls, gnomes, goblins, half-elves, halflings, half-orcs, hobgoblins, humans, kobolds, lizard men, nixies, orcs, pixies, sprites, and troglodytes. I don't know why you'd want to charm a troglodyte, but anyway. And it's just got verbal and somatic components. So you have to be able to speak, you've got to be able to wave your hands. If you're tied up, you can't cast the spell.
Yes. And that's another one, casting time.
If you're gagged, you can't cast the spell. Whereas something like Featherfall, it's only got verbal and material components. So you've got to have a feather on you somewhere, and you've got to be able to speak. So if you're tied up and you're chucked off a cliff, you can cast Featherfall. If you're gagged and you're chucked off a cliff, you're out of luck.
Yes.
So that's why you always bound and gag magic users.
And
and they may gesture that they want you to take the gag off just so they can talk to you about something. Don't let them. Don't let them. Keep them tied up and gagged. And throw them off a cliff.
A perfect literary example of Charm Person, and you might say, oh, he's going to talk about Saruman in Lord of the Rings. No, I'm going to talk about Jessica in Dune, when she and Paul escaped the Harkonnen when they were going to be thrown out in the desert to die. Jessica, the voice She had the voice.
Yes.
The Bene Gesserit voice. She charmed the Harkonnen ornithopter pilots into...
And an example of another example in the great movie that should have got an Oscar, Conan the Barbarian. Thulsa Doom. He has the charm person spell. But Conan makes his saving throw. So when Conan comes up, he's slain everyone else. He's got the broken sword. And he comes up to Thulsa Doom, and Thulsa says, he's been busy making a speech to the masses. And he turns to Conan and says, "My son, you have come to me, my son. Who is your father now, if not I?" And goes on like that. And Conan stops for a moment, and he thinks, and you see him kind of shake his head. He made his saving throw. And then his response is to put his sword in the neck.
Yes.
So,
classic moments in cinema.
Yes, that's what a successful saving throw looks like, guys.
Yeah.
He tried. He tried.
Chop.
Verbal and somatic. He had to speak, and he had to put his hand on Conan's shoulder.
Yes. Great moments in cinema. Comprehend languages. Basically it's universal translator, but, and it should be pointed out, it's reversible. Certain spells are reversible. Charm person is not reversible. Obviously you wouldn't want it to be, I want you to hate my guts. Most monsters do already. It's not that big a deal.
Well, yeah, you don't need a spell for that. You could just poke them with your sword and that'll do it.
Buggers at them. But comprehend languages is reversible, and you can cause a language to be obscured, to be obliterated, to be unreadable. Dancing lights. Dancing lights is a handy one, and the illustration on the bottom of page 65 illustrates why. You can cause what appears to be torches moving down the hall. If you're stuffed in a crack in the wall and you're adventuring all by yourself as a magic user, and here comes the bugbears marching along, and you want them to think that there's a party of adventurers down there, then you can cast dancing lights and send them down there. It also works just for general illumination. Detect magic is handy. Hey, what's in that pile of loot that might be magical? Detect magic. It can also help you detect traps if a trap is magical. It won't specifically tell you the kind of magic. Like, it's not going to say, yeah, there's a magical energy bolt about to fire out of the wall. Just, you'll know something is magical over there. Enlarge. Enlarge is one of those spells that your fighters really love having cast on them, because you can effectively make a person taller, broader, bigger. You can make a guy my size or Kyle size as big as an ogre. You can make something the size of an ogre as big as a giant. Or, let's say you were really thirsty and you only had this little thermos of water. Cast enlarge on it. More water. It doesn't work on... like if you cast enlarge on a bottle of potion, healing potion, it becomes a jug of healing potion. No, that just means you now have to drink an entire jug of liquid to get the effect of one healing potion, and you'll have to pee. Erase destroys magical writings. Magic users hate that one. Kyle was talking about Featherfall. Featherfall has a very short casting time, just 1/10 of a segment, which is very handy. Featherfall prevents you from going splat when you drop and land. However, duration is 1 segment. That's 6 seconds per level, which means if the fall will take you more than if you're casting it at first level and will take you more than 6 seconds, it might spare you some damage. Find familiar. Now here's where we get into weird casting time. 1 to 24 hours to cast Find Familiar. This will summon a special animal to you as a magic user that will be able to perform certain duties, and they will be bonded and loyal to you. unless you do something stupid to hurt them, in which case they'll leave and you don't get to find familiar for another year. And then there's a table. You can get a black cat, a crow, a hawk, a screech owl, a toad, a weasel. You can get a special, or you can have no chance to find a familiar on a 16 to 20. And you gain certain abilities. And the specials include, or the specials go to your alignment. If you're playing a chaotic neutral magic user, you could end up with a Quasit. Chaotic neutral or neutral good, a pseudo dragon. Lawful neutral or lawful good, a brownie. Lawful evil or neutral evil gets you an imp. They have a set number of hit points, which you then have. So it says normal familiars have 2 to 4 hit points in armor class 7. The magic user gains those hit points. They don't suck the life out of the familiar when they show up. It's just that they become that much more robust. But if the familiar dies, you, the magic user, permanently lose those hit points. I don't mean you permanently lose those hit points like, oh, my familiar's dead. I don't have anything to soak that up, to soak up 2 to 7 damage, or 2 to 4 damage. I mean you take 2 to 4 points of damage.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're
we had in one I played with John Deeming, the player Yanni had a magic user, and he had a pseudo dragon. He rolled up a pseudo dragon, and it had like, I can't remember, 17 hit points or something stupid like that. So that was pretty good for Yanni's magic user. But the thing is, if he died, he would have lost 34 hit points, which would have taken him permanently below 0.
Yes.
So the familiar dies, he is dead forever, permanently.
Yeah.
Like no resurrection wouldn't work, and raised dead and stuff wouldn't work either.
Yeah. So it is.
They bring him back to life, and he goes back to being at minus 5 hit points. He can't be raised from it.
Just in a coma.
Yeah.
Mage's
Forever.
in a coma. So, oh no, it's serious. All right. So we're just going to kind of speed along these. Friends is not the same thing as Charm Person. It gives you a charisma boost, and creatures will tend to look on you a bit more favorably. So it helps more with parlay than it does. It has verbal, somatic, and material components, and I can't actually demonstrate with this spell what the somatic component is. And if you got that reference, you're a bigger dork than I am. Hold Portal. Kyle was telling us about Hold Portal. Shuts a door to where it cannot be opened through normal means. The door has to be chopped open or dispel magic, or a higher level magic user has to try to open it. Very handy. Identify. I'm going to say this briefly. Identify lets the magic user tell what a specific item that the magic user suspects is magic is, what it does it have charges, how many charges does it have, and so on and etc. But we're going to come back to Identify. Identify deserves like half an episode on its own.
Yeah, it's pretty mental.
Yeah. Jump. The magic user can leap forward or straight up. It's a good defensive spell. Light. You basically get a magical torch. If you Gandalf in the Lord of the Rings, in the Mines of Moria, he holds his staff and kind of blows on it, and then it glows and illuminates a golden hue around everyone, and they can see where they're going. Same thing. Magic Missile, the old standard. Basically, it's a dart of energy. Magic Missile is a really powerful spell for high-level magic users, because every 3 levels, you can cast an additional one. So a 12th level magic user.
Every 2 levels.
Thank you. I was about to correct myself. So a 12th level magic user is throwing out 6 bolts that do 2 to 5 points of damage. They fly unerringly. You don't roll to hit. The target doesn't get a saving throw. They work against almost everything. unless it has a very high magic resistance, or any magic resistance at all, that gives them a chance to potentially shrug it off. Magic Missile is absolutely a phenomenal spell for mid to high level magic users. If your DM says, do you want to start with Sleep or Magic Missile as your offensive spell? It's a trap. Take Sleep. I mean, imagine you're a police officer and you can carry a crowd-affecting taser or a gun with one bullet, and you can only go get another bullet at the end of the day if you fire it. What do you want? Let's see, what do we got? Mending fixes your clothes. Message is pager system. You can send a message.
Yeah, I think message must have been invented in a game session where the game master's saying, you know, there's one part of the party over there and another part over there, and like, no, you can't talk to each other. Damn it, I'm going to write a spell to address that. So I think that must have been invented for that.
Exactly so. I mean, I remember, I love being able to say this. I was playing Dungeons and Dragons with Gary Gygax, and we were playing in part of Jeff Talanian's excellent Castle Zagig Upper Works. There were 8 or 10 of us at the table, and the fighters were in front. My magic user was at the back, and I said, hey, to whoever was playing the fighter, do you want me to do such and such? And Gary said, wait a second, how are you don't have a walkie-talkie or a cell phone. How are you talking? He's 30 feet away in front of you. Are you yelling it to him? And if you're yelling it to him, let me know. And I'm thinking, it's a trick. Get an axe. No, you're right. I'm sorry, Gary. Yes, I will try and, maneuver my way and huddle up with the fighters. And I think message probably came about under the same circumstances. He was trying to get me to say I was yelling it to him so he could just roll a wandering monster encounter. Nystul's Magic Aura is the first prank spell, I think, in the magic users thing, because you can take any normal object, you can say, ooh, this flash drive is magical. I'm detecting magic on it. It's nothing. It's just, it's $15 Amazon special that has. It's so you can rip off low-level magic users. Yeah. Oh, this is a dagger of red dragon slaying. Oh, that's excellent.
Is it? Oh, detect magic. Oh, yes, it's magical. He must be telling the truth.
Yes. Protection.
I did that to players once. It was Rollmaster. So in Rollmaster, in the combat system, there's criticals and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, one of the effects is stunned, and then there's stunned with no parry. So stunned, you can't do many actions, and there's stunned, no parry. You can't even block anymore. You just stand there going, ugh. Stun, no parry, X rounds. And they went to a place and they asked for if there were any magical items for sale, and he said no, and they were very insistent. Like, it was like people in retail. You don't have any storage out the back, do you? And it's like, oh, okay. So eventually he went, oh yes, says the blacksmith, and he picked up a spade. He said, this is a magical spade. Like, well, what does it do? And it digs holes. Yeah. Apart from that, it is a spade of stunning. And they went, oh, okay. And they gave him 1,500 gold for it. And they went off. And they were waving it around in combat and saying the command word that he had given them. And, of course, nothing happened. So they came back to complain. And he said, oh, but did you touch your opponent? And they went, oh. So in the next combat, they went back and they hit somebody with the spade, and the guy was stunned because he'd been hit by a spade. And then a session or two later, they figured it out.
This is a
but
gun.
If it was D&D, they would have used Nystul's Magic Aura as well.
This is a gun of causing large caliber holes in a human body. It's a magical item. But
and there's of course the axe of lockpicking as well.
Yes, the axe of lockpicking. Protection from evil. We'll go over that with clerics. Push. Literally, you just shove an object, which can have its uses. But it basically is a little bit of telekinesis. You can move something out of the way. Read magic. All magic users start with read magic. It enables you to read scrolls, magical writings, whether they're on a scroll, a device, written on a wall as part of a warning or trap or ward of some kind, read magic is your baby. Shield is not a bad one. Shield is just that. It directly from the front, it gives the magic user armor class 4. So the magic user in robes, who, a rat can take him down, if you've got shield, if
armor
that
class 2. So it's armor class 2 against handheld missiles and 3 against arrows and things.
yes, so two against
and 4 against everything else.
Yes, 2 against spears and whatnot, 3 against crossbow bolts, arrows, bullets, manicore spikes, sling stones, and then 4 against melee attacks. So thank you for catching that, Kyle. Shocking Grasp is the joy buzzer of death. You literally, you cast it, and then you just look for somebody to touch, and you deal 1 to 8 points of damage. Plus 1 hit.
So if I'm a magic user meeting the Kobold King, I'd shake his hand.
Then we have Sleep, or as I call it, first level Fireball. First level Fireball, because you can knock down whole bunches of creatures. They don't stay asleep forever. It's not comatose. But they do fall down for 5 rounds or 5 minutes, which the industrious magic user, even if he's alone, should be able to slit a bunch of throats in 5 minutes of sleeping creatures. Depending on the monster's hit dice. Now, the area of effect is a 30-foot circle, but if in that 30-foot circle there are, say, 10 kobolds, but there's also a couple of ogres, sleep will affect the kobolds first, but not the ogres. Basically, it starts with the lowest hit dice creatures. So if you roll, again, we're talking about kobolds, the number of kobolds of up to 1 hit dice monsters that sleep can affect is 4 to 16. That's 4 4-sided dice.
Rob says, I assume in reference to the Shocking Grasp, the Joker's favourite trick.
Yes.
And fighter, the first level magic user, you board the gobos to sleep trying to get that 3rd level spell to work.
So yes, you've got various hit dice brackets that sleep can potentially knock down. Once you're using it against ogre-sized creatures, it's 0 to 1. That is, the game master rolls a d4, or the player, depending on how the game master's feeling about that, and only affects the 1 creature in a 3 to 4. If you try and cast sleep on a hill giant, punch.
Well, and the good thing I want to observe about sleep is that there's no saving throw.
That you are very correct.
It affects a varying number of creatures. So under 1 hit die, it affects 4 to 16. But for the ones it does affect, there's no saving throw. That's pretty nasty.
That is pretty nasty. The attentive low-level magic user will pray for the sleep spell in his spell book, because Kyle's running 2 characters. One's a magic user who's got sleep through that kobold encounter. Guess what? Spider climb is just what it says on the tin. You can climb up sheer surfaces. Tensor's floating disc is a very handy one. Basically, it creates a flat circular disc that you can load up with up to 2,500 gold pieces weight of material and move it around the dungeon. You can't write on it, and it will always stay at a certain distance from you. You can't send it into the dungeon up 200 yards of corridor to scoop up the gold and bring it back to you. You have to be nearby. It's one of those handy for when a character falls kind of spells, as well as large amounts of treasure. Unseen Servant I'm just going to let the spell description speak for itself. The Unseen Servant is a non-visible valet, a butler to step and fetch, open doors and hold chairs, as well as clean and mend. The spell creates a force which is not strong, but obeys the command of the magic user. It can carry only lightweight items, a maximum of 200 gold pieces, twice that amount moving across a relatively friction-free surface, such as a smooth stone or wood floor. It can only open normal doors, drawers, lids, etc. It cannot fight. It can't be killed. It's a force rather than a creature, and it can be dispelled or eliminated after taking 6 hit points of magical damage.
And he also acts as a 90-foot pole.
Yes.
Because his area of effect is a 3-inch radius, so that's 30 yards, or 30 feet. So a 30-foot pole. Because you can get him to poke and prod things, including the ground ahead.
The high-level magic user will have a good sheaf of Unseen Servant spells memorized for the day's adventuring.
Yeah, so had I been a magic user and had that spell, it might have been something I'd cast if I were going into the dungeon on my own, poking ahead. Mm-hmm. No, I mean, I'd probably just use a staff, but the spell works as well.
Yep. Ventriloquism will get you on a talent show. I spoke about right, and I think I explained right. I'm not going to go into the specific mechanics until we get over to the Dungeon Master and talk about the magical inks. But suffice to say, right is key for magic users almost as much as sleep. You can damage yourself trying to write higher level spells. If you're a first level magic user and you're trying to write Time Stop, which is a 9th level spell, there are 15, 16 levels between your spell ability now and what you can cast and when you can cast right. Your saving throw is going to be at -6. If you fail your saving throw when you're writing, you take 2 to 4 points of damage for every level of the spell. So in the case of Time Stop, it's going to be 18 to 36 points. Your first level magic user is going to die. Don't try and write a 9th level spell when you're first level magic user. And I think that's any more? Yes.
No, that's it. That's it for first level spells.
There are your first level spells.
So EOTB says sleep is also why you always have an elf in the party. And he's quite right. And Rob says, doesn't spider climb require eating a live spider? That's correct.
It sure does.
A drop of bitumen and a live spider are the material component, both of which must be eaten by the spell recipient. And he says, how does the magic user keep that spider alive until it's gulp time? Well, I mean, that's just one of the things. That, you know, that's why you have a robe with all these little pouches on it. And you pull that little spider up and eat him up. It doesn't say it has to be doesn't say it has to be a tarantula or anything. It could just be one of those little tiny ones. But yeah, it is. You keep it in a little vial and open up, pop, skull it back.
I mean, you could probably argue with browbeat a DM into just skipping the material components, since statistically speaking, you eat like what 3 spiders a year in your sleep.
Do you? I thought that was just toddlers.
I don't know. I've heard various urban legends about that. So I'm gonna let's see. We're gonna close the player's handbook because Kyle, in our time we have left, because good Lord, we have been going for a while now. I want you to talk about equipping the magic user because you do it better than anybody I know.
Equipping? Well, I mean, it's you don't get to choose the spells. You roll them up.
No. Shopping, equipment, stuff to carry.
Oh, equipment and stuff to... Oh, God. Well, okay, so the magic user starts with the least money except for the monk. So the cleric gets 30 to 180 gold, fighter 50 to 200, the thief 20 to 120, and the magic user 20 to 80 gold. Mm-hmm. They get the least, but remember that they can't wear armor. and they're very limited in the weapons that they can use, and the weapons that they can use are fairly cheap anyway. Where is it? The magic user can use dagger, dart, staff.
Yes.
And a dagger is
1 to 4. Yeah, dagger.
Yeah, that's the damage. The cost. I mean.
Oh, the cost. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So so a dagger and scabbard is 2 gold. Dart is 5 silver, so you can buy 4 for a gold. And a staff doesn't even list a staff. Oh no, sorry, it calls it quarter staff or something.
Yeah.
No, it doesn't even list a staff, so it's probably similar to a spear, 1 gold or something. So they don't have to spend much money on weapons, even if they had all 3. Even though they can in fact just use one of those 3. So which would you choose as your starting weapon, dagger, dart, or staff? I would be inclined to go for dart.
Yeah, same.
I mean, a staff is pretty damn useful because you can use it as a pole poking your head and so on. But a staff will tempt you to go into combat. Will tempt you to go into melee combat, and with 1d4 hit points, you don't want to be tempted to go in, and probably AC 10, you don't want to be tempted to go into combat, in melee combat. So the dagger, dart, and staff. Dagger's always good, and a dagger can be thrown. It's just relatively expensive. If you lose them afterwards, you can throw 2 daggers around, but you can throw 3 darts around. The dagger does 1 to 4 damage normally, and the dart does 1 to 3. Now, the thing about D&D is, at the low levels, everyone is kind of inclined to I want the big strength, I want the big bonus to hit, but you need to have a pretty huge bonus to hit before multiple attacks are not better. Being able to roll twice, because if you've got, say, a 50% chance to hit and you throw 2 times, you've got a 75% chance that at least one of them will hit. And if you roll 3 times, you've got an 87.5% chance that at least one will hit. So having multiple attacks, and that's why like a dozen kobolds could be more dangerous than 1 ogre.
Yep.
Because that 1 ogre, he's limited in how many attacks he can do and how many he can contend with at one time. But those dozen kobolds could all be chucking stuff at you, or all be meleeing your party of 5 or 6 or whatever. So they could actually end up being more dangerous than that single ogre is. So having multiple attacks is pretty powerful, and multiple attacks at range when you've got 1d4 hit points is really good. So in most cases, I'd be inclined to go with the dart. It's just that you have to carry a lot of them, and they're not that. Most GMs are not going to let you reuse them. They'll let you reuse a dagger probably if you throw a dagger, but they probably won't let you reuse a dart.
Missiles are recovered at 50% found, but I would be disinclined to include darts in that.
Yeah. So most game masters are going to go, and darts are just, they're fire and forget. You've lost them. They're gone. They're like arrows and stuff. So darts is probably a pretty good, a good one there. Staves are mostly useful later on when you come across a magical one, because then you can use it for its magical effects and you can use it in combat. But you're probably not going to get this, staff of the magi or something at second level. That's probably going to happen at later levels, by which time you will have got, by 5th level, you've got a second weapon proficiency, and you can choose that then. If you're not proficient in the weapon, you're at -5. Game masters will vary in this. My personal feeling is anyone can use any weapon they want, but they'll have that non-weapon proficiency, except clerics with the sharp weapons. They get in trouble with their god if they do that. Right. But if a magic user wants to pick up a greatsword and attack with it as a 1st level magic user at -5, the magic user can do that. I don't know why he wants to, but he can if he wants to. That might happen later on. So I'd probably go for the dart. That's the equipment. Armor, you're not going to wear. There are some GMs that give a house rule that because you can't cast magic when you're wearing armor. So I, as Game Master, have allowed it. You can wear armor, you just can't cast magic when you're doing it. I find, and so sometimes what they've done is carry a spare suit of armor, with the theory being, when I run out of my spells for the day, I'll put the armor on. However, nobody's actually done it, because they start saying, if they've got to a point where they've used up their spells for the day, the rest of the party's pretty battered too, and they start saying, hey, if I'm wearing an armor, someone might mistake me for a fighter and have a go at me. So I've still got 1 to 4 hit points per level, so yeah, I'm not going to put on the armor. So I've allowed it, but it's never come up anyway.
Now, just to point out, and we'll get into dual classing in later lessons, but if you understand the concepts a little bit and you're like, well, hey, how about if I'm a dual class human, magic user, fighter, can I cast spells wearing armor? The answer is still no. Elves get a pass because elves are specially magical creatures. Clerics get a pass because their magic is different from magic user magic.
Yeah, so again, no armor. So then you're just looking at the more mundane adventuring equipment for yourself. And that's the pretty standard stuff that everyone should be taking, which is, of course, their rations. Mm-hmm. Not only rations for you, but rations as bait, if you want to attract a monster, or as a distraction if you want them to run away. Because the rules state, unintelligent monsters pursuing a fleeing foe, there is a chance that the unintelligent monster will stop to pick up any dropped food. An intelligent monster, there is a chance that they'll stop to pick up any dropped treasure. So ideally, you bake a scone and you stick a gold coin in it, and as you're fleeing, you toss them over your shoulder behind you. And then you...
That is the living definition of gaming the system.
But no, so rations for you, and also you've got to have enough rations you might find yourself in the dungeon longer than otherwise. So if I dropped down into that pit and I'd still been alive afterwards, I might have been there a day or two and started to get hungry. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to have to rummage around the bottom of a pit that all this other stuff has dropped in and died for something to eat. There might be some organic matter there, but I probably don't want to eat it. You may get stuck in the dungeon. You may get stuck in a pit. Dungeons are full of doors that close behind you and don't reopen. And of course, you can always go out, you camp out in the wilderness to go into the dungeon, and you find yourself in there for 7 days in the wilderness for 7 days instead of 3 days or whatever. Always a bit longer. It's always good to have a bit more food. And as I said, carry some on your person in case you get stuck somewhere, or you have to drop some to distract something chasing you.
Just so.
Because that pack of giant rats, okay, they might only have half a hit dice or something, but they still got one attack each, at least one attack each, and a dozen of them is. So just toss food over your shoulder. Yeah. You don't want to tangle with them because they're not going to have any. They're not going to have any treasure anyway, so there's no point killing them, and they're not going to be worth much XP.
Right.
So yeah, there's food, of course, and then everything else is just the standard, where you get your 10-foot pole or your staff. You've got to have a light source, and you even need a light source if you have infravision or ultravision. You need to have a light source because you might want to blind somebody. Mm-hmm. So if you have some creature in the dungeon that doesn't see well, and you get a bullseye lantern and you shine it, and he's used to infravision, you just blind him momentarily.
Yep.
You can do that sort of thing as well. Yeah, because just as the light outside stopped my infravision, the light, a big bright light would stop their infravision underneath. So. And of course there'll be some things that aren't necessarily spottable by infravision, like maybe gargoyles or something like that. Mm-hmm. So you do want a backup light source, even if you yourself have infravision. You of course You of course want to mirror. I mean, the classic mirror thing is Perseus fighting the Medusa and looking at her reflection in his shield, so that he doesn't have to gaze directly on her, and he can still fight her. But something else you can do with a mirror is, if you come to a corner and you think something is around the corner, you stick the mirror around the corner. It's pretty low tech, but anyone can do it. It's just another way of sneaking. You could have your little thief, and he's worked his way in. He's done all his move silently and hide in shadows checks and stuff, and snuck past all these monsters. And he's come to the room that he thinks is the treasure room with a big bad monster, and maybe it's got a big bad monster in it. He wants to see, is the dragon asleep or not? Stick my mirror around the corner and have a look. So there's that as well. And of course, oil. Everyone needs their flasks of oil.
It's your
medieval hand grenade.
Summon forth Brother Maynard. Bring the holy hand grenade of Antioch.
That's right, but not to be used in melee. Okay.
Yeah.
It's not to be used at close range, because when you miss, and you will miss, when you miss, there's a roll for what direction it goes in and how far it goes in. And it may go short or long. So it may happen that you actually chuck it at your feet if you're close enough.
Yeah.
But if he's like 10 yards away, that's not going to happen. But yeah, you carry basically as much oil as you can carry, because you can always burn the bastards.
Yeah.
Because that's an area effect.
I remember when we were able to get Kyle at the table when his schedule synced up, and I don't remember what system we were using, but the radio was not great, so we were not doing voice. I was just taking text from the guys, and I could go back through the chat logs in my Roll20 game and find the date and time where Kyle, like, I would go into, okay, well, all right, Dave, what are you doing to your character? All right, Ben, Aurora, Kyle's response, burn the bastards. And I knew exactly what he meant. I knew a flask of oil was getting hucked at the monsters.
Well, it is very effective. If you can throw 3 darts or 1 flask of oil, 1 flask of oil can often be better, particularly if you've got a group. If you've got like half a dozen kobolds or something, you chuck that. Even if you don't get a direct hit on one, it may end up being a direct hit on the other, and just the splash on the other, 1d6 damage.
Yep.
That could be enough to take out a kobold, or even if they're tougher ones like orcs or hobgoblins or something, it's going to whittle them down. And some of the less intelligent monsters may actually back away from fire. Typical animals are scared of fire. So yeah, you make good use of the oil, and if you have men-at-arms, we'll get to that soon. And then of course you have your 50 foot of rope, your iron spikes to keep doors open and so on. And caltrops and all that sort of stuff. That's every adventurer should have this. I mean, if you've got an adventure and you don't have iron spikes and a rope, I don't know what to do with you.
Yeah.
Now I mentioned men at arms.
Yes.
Bill talked about this in one of the other streams, hiring men at arms. This is particularly important for a magic user, and not just when the magic user is on their own. Even if there's another 6 people in the party, the magic user should still have men at arms. Even if only to carry treasure. Now, Bill did make mention of, maybe the men-at-arms won't want to carry treasure. Yeah, they will if they're going to get a share of it. Okay? So if it's like you can keep half of what you can carry, they're going to load themselves up, right? You're going to have to hold them back from all wanting to take the treasure by themselves. So, because the coins weigh a lot, so you need those men-at-arms to carry the treasure, if nothing else. But again, like I said about kobolds and rats and all the rest, even when they're not very powerful, they're all doing an attack roll. So if you've got 5 men-at-arms and they all throw a spear each, that's 5 rolls. Even if they only hit on a 20, after a couple of rounds, there's a decent chance that they'll get a hit. And that will distract the enemy, if nothing else. If there's 5 javelins coming at them every round, that's going to distract them. Or, EO2B says, cheap first level spell with infinite duration, 2 spearmen, large shields. Exactly. Or if you give them darts, they could be throwing 3 around each. That's 15 darts a round coming out.
Yep.
Someone's going to hit something. Someone's going to hit something. And even if they don't hit, the less powerful creatures like kobolds and things like that might have to do a morale check and back off. And again, players quite often when they come from later editions think about what can I do to kill this guy, and it has to be something I can kill him. No, it could also be something that makes him back off, because again, avoid unnecessary encounters. Do you need to kill those kobolds? What are they going to have, like D6 silver on them or something like that? What for? Do you need to kill them? Not necessarily. You may need to, but not necessarily. You want the one that's got the treasure. That's going to be the king kobold or his shaman or something like that. The magical or the monetary treasure. That's what you want. You're not interested, because the kobolds are worth like 10 XP. Gold is worth 1 XP for each piece. You can carry a level of gold on your back when you're a low-level guy. You're a thief. You need 1,250 XP to go up a level. You can carry 1,250 gold.
125 pounds. Yes, you certainly can.
Yeah, you can certainly carry if it's in gem form. Which personally I would go for.
What thieves prefer. I can't remember ever reading a Fafhrd and Greymaster story where they were like, boy, I sure am glad we found 50,000 silver talons. But there were a lot of them where they were... Thing if I were a thief, I'd be saying to a thief on my own, I'd be saying to the men-at-arms, hey guys, you carry any gold or silver we find, you have it. Any jewelry, gems, magical items we find, I will have it. And I think most men-at-arms, given that they get paid like 5 gold a month or whatever, would be quite happy with that deal. Oh, yeah.
So, and I would just hope that we're lucky and we don't like only roll up gold. Platinum and stuff as treasure, and there's no gems. Or I would also hope that we're not unlucky and we only roll up gems, because if we've just cleared out this whole dungeon and there's just there's no gold or anything, but there's this 10,000 GP worth diamond necklace, and my thief's standing there going ha ha ha, and the men-at-arms are standing there and looking at their empty hands. I think their hand not being filled with gold is soon going to fill with sword. Yeah, and they're going to have some words to say to me.
You say
but in normal circumstances, there's going to be a mix. But anyway, men-at-arms. For 5 gold, you can get leather armor. For 1 gold, you can get spear. And for 1 gold, you can get a small wooden shield. So for 7 gold, you can equip a man-at-arms who will be AC 7 and be able to do 1 to 8 points of damage with his spear. And men-at-arms will usually have, 5 to 7 hit points or something. Mm-hmm. And so if you have 5 of them, so that's what the starting magic user needs to be spending their money on, particularly if they're on their own, but even if they're not.
Yep.
Once they've got their basic gear for themselves, things like, iron spikes and all the rest, men-at-arms as soon as possible and equipping them. And then you can argue, would I rather have 1 man-at-arms in scale mail at 45 gold, if I have that much, because you only got 20 to 80 gold, remember. But, you can equip men-at-arms for 7 gold each. And then how much do you pay them? Well, that depends on the game master. It varies a lot. But at least you give them a gold signing bonus or something and promise them more. 8 gold and, 20 to 80 gold, you should be able to afford a handful of them. And that's going to make a big difference, because that's 1 to 5 guys who are making attacks against your enemies, who are a physical barrier between you and the enemy. If they're doing a shield wall and you're standing behind them, that's going to keep your magic user alive long enough to be able to cast sleep and hopefully not get his own men-at-arms in the area of effect.
That's why I love...
Because that sleep has collateral damage.
Yeah. That's why I almost like the magic user's limited options on a few things, because it opens up the men-at-arms. I mean, the fighter, he has a shield, he has his chainmail, he has his sword. The cleric, similar but mace. Thief has his thieving tools, leather armor, and a short sword. You're walking through the dungeon with an armored personnel carrier made out of armored persons. Yeah, you are pretty fit.
Yeah, and that's about all I have to say. Obviously, always things like holy water and stuff are good, but 25 gold, it's a bit much for the starting character. It's no big deal a level or two later, but it's a bit much for the starting character, especially because you get to chuck it once, and it does as much damage as fire does, and everything you're going to encounter, if it's affected by holy water, it's going to be affected by fire. There are some things like ghosts or whatever that won't be affected by fire, but if you're encountering a ghost or a ghast or whatever at first level, you're dead anyway. So it's
pretty much. We'll get into level appropriate challenges, not challenge ratings. Not challenge ratings, but level appropriate challenges a bit more on the DMing side of things. But yeah, if you're first level and you see a ghost, you're going to see two ghosts, the one you just saw and then you.
Yeah. I don't think there's anything remarkable about what I said there. It's all pretty standard from years of dungeoneering.
Yep.
But the only thing I think that modern players will struggle with is the idea of men-at-arms. Because they're used to the character having to do everything. Just like your character has to do everything the whole party does, your character has to do all the fighting and all the rest as well. So, I think that the men-at-arms would be the only novel thing for most people.
Yeah. So, there's your magic user, guys. We didn't go in hard on spell books and memorization times. I'll kind of bring that back around the next lesson, which if Rusty can't make it on Friday for our discussion of virtual tabletops, will be then, otherwise Monday. So Kyle, next week I think we'll do a couple. Maybe you can dice up a mage and we can show him how to get revenge magic style on these kobolds.
I'm embarrassed I died while just walking into the dungeon. That's embarrassing. Here we were talking about how I was going to show how it was going to be done, and I just fell in a 10-foot pit. But that could have happened if I had 1800 strength as well. So that's
true. True.
So I think it does demonstrate that stats don't necessarily make a difference if the player is dumb. I was dumb. I just walked in. Oh well.
So yeah, I think that's going to wrap us up. We have been going for a long time now, but I hope you guys have gotten a lot out of this, and I appreciate that lots of folks have stayed on the stream, and I know that Facebook metrics or YouTube metrics or algorithms are not going to play nicely with this video. So please comment on the video, like the video. That helps so much. Tell people about the channel. We've picked up a lot of subscribers here just this week alone. We buoyed up from the low 700s to like 725, I think, which is lovely, drawing ever closer to that virtual convention that Kyle and I want to put on for you guys. So that is absolutely awesome. So please like, subscribe, hit the bell, do all the fun stuff. Comments are the best because they help boost things up where other folks who aren't our friends yet can see them. So we really appreciate that. And we'll have a final time. And speaking of friends, back at 12:30 Eastern Standard tomorrow, I will have Matt Finch on the show, and we're going to talk to Matt about all the wonderful things that he's done, is doing, and will be doing for classic tabletop gaming, and just generally have fun, like we always do. That's what we do, right, Kyle? We have fun, man.
Well, we try.
We try.
Even if there's a killer GM.
All right, guys. Thanks again. Have an absolutely wonderful evening. And if, like, I could make a creepypasta almost out of, like, the random YouTube streaming notification for me. If you see a YouTube streaming notification at 4 o'clock tomorrow morning, I'm not up streaming. I appreciate the likes and the comments that people put on it, but that ain't me, babe. You guys have an absolutely fantastic night. Thank you, everyone, for engaging in the chat. Be well. Take care of each other. Kyle, any more closing thoughts?
I'm still embarrassed.
Kyle's still in shock. Okay, guys. All right. Take care, and we'll see you tomorrow. Peace.
Ciao. It was embarrassing.
Okay, and we are